Hello and welcome to Study with Sri. Here I am covering Indian Polity by M. Laxmikant 6th edition chapter wise. I discussed up to the Government of India Act 1858. So moving forward to Indian Council Act of 1861. After the Great Revolt of 1857 means Sepoy Mutiny, British government felt that the cooperation of Indian in the administration of their country was very necessary. So in pursuance of this policy of association, three acts were enacted by the British Parliament which were called as Indian Council Act. They were 1861, 1892 and 1909 Indian Council Act. So the features of 1861 Indian Council Act. It made the beginning of representative institution by associating Indian with the lawmaking process. Very important that in lawmaking process it made the beginning of representative institution and associate Indians in the lawmaking process. It thus provided that the Viceroy should nominate some Indians as non-official members. Very important, as non-official members of his expanded council. In 1862, Lord Canning, the then Viceroy, nominated three Indians to his legislative council. They were the Raja of Benares, the Maharaja of Patiala and Sir Dinkar Rao. Second, it initiated the process of decentralization by restoring legislative powers of Bombay and Madras presidencies. We know that at the time of Regulating Act 1773, the presidencies of the Governor of Madras and Bombay presidency was made subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. And at the time of 1833, it deprived the legislative powers from Bombay and Madras presidencies. But this act initiated the process of decentralization and restoring the legislative powers of Bombay and Madras presidencies. Okay, this policy of legislation devolution resulted in the grant of almost complete internal autonomy to provinces in 1937. Next, it also provided for the establishment of new legislative council of Bengal, North-Western Province and Punjab, which were established in 1862, 1886 and 1897 respectively. So, it provided for the establishment of new legislative council. कहाँ पे हुआ था new legislative council? Bengal 1862, North-Western Province 1886 and Punjab 1897. It empowered the Viceroy to make rules and orders for more convenient transaction of business in the council. So Viceroy को power दिया, Viceroy should make rules and orders for more convenient transaction of business in the council. It also gave a recognition of portfolio system which was introduced by Lord Canning in 1859. So what is portfolio system? It is a system where a member of the Viceroy Council was made in charge of one or more department of the government and was authorized to issue final orders on behalf of the council on matters of the office department. So, in portfolio system, a member of Viceroy Council, okay, Viceroy Council का एक member was made in charge of one or more department of the government and was authorized to issue final orders on behalf of the council on matters of his departments. Next, it empowered the Viceroy to issue ordinances at the time of emergency, but without the concurrence of Legislative Council. The life of such an ordinance was 6 months. Next, Indian Council Act of 1892. So the features were, it increased the number of additional non-official members in both central as well as provincial legislative council, but maintained the official majority in them. Very important that it increased the number of non-official members but maintained the official majority. Next, it increased the function of legislative councils and gave them the power of discussing the budget and addressing questions to the executive. Very important that the system of budget was introduced in the British in India in 1860, and it increased the function of Legislative Council and gave them power of discussing the budget at the time of Indian Council Act 1892. Next, it provided for the nomination of some non-official members of the 1. Central Legislative Council by the Viceroy, second, that of Provincial Legislative Council by the Governor. Now, the recommendation should remember that in Central Legislative Council by the Viceroy on the recommendation of the Provincial Legislative Councils and the Bengal Chamber of Commerce, and for Provincial Legislative Council by the Governor on the recommendation of District Board, municipalities, universities, trade association, zamindars and chambers. So the Act of 1892 made a limited and indirect provision for the use of election in filling up some of the non-official seats. Very important, some of the non-official seats in both central and provincial legislative council. But the word election was not used in that act. The process was described as nomination made on the recommendation of certain bodies. Again, I am saying that the Act made a limited and indirect provision for the use of election in the filling up some of non-official seats both in central and provincial council. The word election was not used in that Act, and the process was described as nomination made on the recommendation of certain bodies. So, thank you for watching. Wait for next videos.